Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Giving honor and praise unto the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular presentation, we do not intend for it to be long, brothers and sisters. Nonetheless, we do hope and pray that everybody is well and will be well and be better. So, without any further ado, and giving honor to the one who created the heavens and the earth, we apologize regarding the tardiness being 2 days later than the anticipated time of this presentation. We refer to this as Black History Month, President's Day, and whose month is it? And what we want to point out, brothers and sisters, is several things. The slides are only 5 in number. It's not more than, say, 5 slides in this presentation. Nonetheless, brothers and sisters, we intend in due love and respect to make sure that we present it in respect, humility, and that we are open to constructive criticism. So let us pull up the slide and start from this particular case. I want to, brothers and sisters, give a shout out to the family and the people in the South who actually helped me get the computer that I do have that I use currently on this, because now I use 2 different aspects and so forth and so on. And as I stated on this channel and other channels, pick your teacher. I will be one of the first brothers, I think, not to be haughty, to state that I may not be your Hebrew teacher. I may not be your teacher in general. There were teachers that I picked, and there are those teachers whom either their spirit didn't click with mine or vice versa, so be it. But brothers and sisters, having taught Hebrew in different places throughout the Eastern Hemisphere, the East Coast in the Western Hemisphere, sorry. I want to say it like that, from New York to South Carolina, and having written Hebrew books, brothers and sisters, 6 of them on my own, and 3 in addition to that in the God and the Spirit that the sister and the lady in my life, Sarai, Michaela, have with I, in the books for those who are interested called Hebrew for Couples. It's for those who do want it. And what we want to point out, brothers and sisters, in this says President's Day in what month? What you're seeing, brothers and sisters, on the right-hand side is a picture of Frederick Douglass. Now, real quick, what many may not know, to the best of my knowledge, I believe the gentleman was 17 at the time when he beat up his slave master and ran away. Frederick Douglass was a person who was shown in a recent movie about Harriet Tubman. He didn't have no line in it, he didn't speak in it, but they showed him. Frederick Douglass was a friend of Abraham Lincoln. And one of the things we want to point out is that during those days and times, it was a very perilous situation. You had the Civil War going on in that particular case. You had, after that, and after the death of Lincoln, President Johnson, and then later on Grant, with the matter of Reconstruction. And in the book that I'm going to show and advertise in this, I spoke upon that particular matter and so forth and so on. President's Day was started in 1951. Black History Month was first celebrated in 1970. Black History Month was given status as a month in 1976. It was first spoken upon as Black History Week back in the 1920s, for those who do know. And it was in honor of Frederick Douglass. Carter G. Woodson was a person some time ago. For those who are interested, you can look it up on your own. That was very influential in wanting to set a time aside regarding Black history. Now, as we know, Black history is all year long. And what I did when doing and researching, say this for this presentation, what I did and noticed is I looked to see news articles that spoke upon the matter of Black History Month. In a Starbucks store not far from where I work at, they have balloons that say I am Black History, and I showed a picture of it on my Facebook. What do I want to point out by that is that some people will support it and some people will not. But we, the House of Israel, we who are deemed as, quote, Black people, we do not want to cut our nose in spite of our face. Oh, it's the shortest month of the year, so forget it. No. Use the fact and due respect that our people are listening and have an attentive ear in order to reach out to our brothers and sisters. My family came into this understanding of being an Israelite by an elder to me giving my grandmother fish, and she would be paid, and he would be paid for such. So we never know what avenue the Most High may use for people to come into a particular light and then into a particular understanding. So again, brothers and sisters, we want to respectfully take advantage of the matter of, quote, Black History Month, while our people's attentive matter is there, and present what we want to state. Next slide, please. Slave master of over 300 people. If I can be heard, and if people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard, and if people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. Slave master of over 300 people. George Washington, born in 1732 and died in 1799. He was the first president. Sworn into office in 1789 and was president until 1797. He was sworn into office in New York. The White House was not completed until the era of the second president, which was John Adams. All right, John Adams, the second president, is the father of John Quincy Adams, the 6th president. For those who do know, John Quincy Adams was the president of America when Queen Isabella II was the Queen of Spain during the era and the timing of the Takora, which later on, when they were retransported into the Amistad. So, brothers and sisters, what do we want to point out for edification purposes? What do we want to sit there and speak upon on edification matters? George Washington had slaves. In the 1760s, brothers and sisters, in the 1760s, George Washington transported Black people as slaves from the United States, or at that time, should I say, from the colonial states, to Barbados. George Washington used to take the teeth out of his slaves and use it as his own. That was pointed out by a brother on Facebook and historically cited. So this first president of the United States, now, he was not the president of the Continental Congress, which had 8 presidents of its own prior to the timing of George Washington. What we're talking about is the matter of the United States and the inauguration matter, and when he became from general to president in this particular case. Thank you, Sarah Michaela. Thank you, my sister, my sweetheart, for typing in the number 4 so I can know if I can be heard, and so on. He, brothers and sisters, was 11 years old when Thomas Jefferson was born. Thomas Jefferson had over twice the amount, we may say, or just about twice the amount of slaves that George Washington had. So when studying upon the history of slavery, we want to point out, if we will, that colonial America from 1607 until 1776 had slaves within it. Florida is a place where black people were enslaved by the Spanish ever since the 1560s. The people that were brought, brothers and sisters, to Jamestown, Virginia in 1619, according to my studies, were people who were already enslaved and were brought to that place. In the book that will be advertised later, and I thank you all for joining into the presentation. Press the number 4 if you can hear me and if you're in good spirits, please. Thanks. And that is, there was Dutch in New York that had slaves, and then the British in New York that had slaves. And then slavery ending in New York in the era, say, from either 1826 or 1827. Me and my lady Michaela Sarai was speaking not too long ago about a place that was on Fulton called the Slave Theater in New York City. And it's closed now. So while we talk about gentrification and while we're talking about things not standing up as long as or how as strong as they used to, I've been in that theater when I was a child, the Slave Theater, when I was 10 years old. I'm now, thank the Most High, I'll be 43 coming less than 2 weeks. When I was 10 years old and I went into that place with my mother, may she rest in peace, is the first time I personally saw the people from Demona. They did a presentation in New York City. Demona is in the land of Israel, by the way. And these are people who, from the 1960s, left the United States, went to Liberia, and from Liberia went into the land of Israel. And during that timing, while they're still there to this day, in the 1990s, namely 1990, they came over to New York and they did a presentation. And one of the pictures that was inside of the Slave Theater was a big brolic, stock, strong black man with no head. And then next to him was a short, puny, like Caucasian man holding the head of the black man. And those are things that we want to point out for reference purposes. So as places such as the Slave Theater that's in New York is shut down, there are still places in Maryland that have it. There are still places, as we know, about the African American Museum in DC that speak upon such. And we want to get this literature out there. We want to get this information out there. We want to go, and not to be self-centered, I made a list to the best of my knowledge on the East Coast of all of the African American museums and where they're located, from Pennsylvania all the way down as far as Alabama. Because these are things that when you want to go away and do your studies, look up these things so you can sit there and see what it is. People hope you don't study. People hope you don't sit there and take the time out to research the matter. People hope for they who want to sit there and say, oh no, the AP Association, we Associated Press, AP, don't want to sit there and have Black studies, which will lead into the discussion of slavery taught in high schools. They say, let that be for college when you pay for it or whatever like that. But brothers and sisters, we want to sit there and present this out to our people. All right, so let's go on in this particular case. Notes in the book. Now, when I kept on speaking upon, brothers and sisters, the book advertised, this is the book I'm talking about. You can get this book online for $30. All right, Deuteronomy 28, verses 15 to 68, History Untold to the Masses. Brothers and sisters, that book has over 300 pages of information. I attempt to, when writing a book, to make sure you give the milk and the meat. I attempt to give both the milk and the meat. So if you're going to respect a brother to sit there and want to patronize by buying my book, I find it to be my duty to make sure that it is worth every dollar that you worked hard for. whether you call your job the plantation or not. You understand? The slave states in the area now called the United States were as follows: Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, North and South Carolina, New York and New Jersey, Pennsylvania and New Hampshire, Arkansas, Delaware, Virginia, Vermont, Connecticut, Maryland, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Missouri. Whoa. Missouri was a slave state? Yeah. New York was a slave state? Yeah. And we want to highlight that, if we will. Make sure I get it to the highlighter. Thank you for the time, brothers and sisters. New York and New Jersey in the 1600s. How many people, whether you're listening to this live or will hear this later on when it's uploaded, and we ask you all to subscribe to the channel. Thank you, my love Sarah, for typing that in. How many people know that slavery in these same lands existed legally longer than the time of the United States being, quote, 100% free? How many people know that it was in the year 2013 that Mississippi ratified the matter regarding the situation with 1865 and its 13th Amendment matter? So that means until the year 2013, after the movie Lincoln came out by Steven Spielberg, Mississippi was still legally a slave state. And correct me if I'm wrong, one of the poorest states in the United States. Why do I say that? Not that I'm rich. Is that what the white man was fighting for in the South was to maintain what some call the peculiar institution or slavery. That's what they were fighting for. They wanted to hold on to their slaves. So the import conscious community, and I ask this in no disrespect, what do you mean when you say that slavery ended in 1807 or 1808? No, it didn't. The slave trade legally ended in 1807. But we know, if you read the book From Slavery to Freedom by Franklin Moss, that the slave trade itself in the United States was made legal again in the 1850s. So that way they can sit there and get the people to be put back from Africa into slavery, because so many people were running from slavery into the North. So, brothers and sisters, for those interested in this book here, Deuteronomy 28, History Untold to the Masses. All right. Now, let's go on in this. It says, in the era of 1803, the president at the time, Thomas Jefferson, born the same year that George Washington had slaves at age 11, the Louisiana Purchase was made, and this expanded the territory of the United States. It should be noted the United States did not exist as a legal term until 1776. So, brothers and sisters, this, what we read right here on the left-hand side, is part of what's written inside of this book. So for those who have patronized and bought it, I appreciate it. For those who have asked others to buy it, I appreciate it, brothers and sisters. And this book right here, I started working on it when I was 19 years old. I'm now, creator willing, will be the weekend after next 43 years old. This work don't stop, thank the Most High. My mother, may she rest in peace, did not see the publication of this book, but she saw the first draft of it. So we want to continue that kind of legacy. If you want to get something published, ask those who have books published. If you want to just speak your words and have it on audiobook, that's up to you. In this day and time, and what they call the information superhighway, there are so many ways to get your information out there that there's virtually no reason for one not to want to do it. Have that heart, have that courage, and let's get it done, family. Next part. Lincoln is something that happened. Nathaniel Gordon was born in 1826 in Maine. In 1860, he had a slave ship named Erie and over 800 slaves in her. Now, when we say her, it's because it was a boat, all right? It was captured in August 1860 by the USS Monaghan. Now, last August, me and my lady was talking, right? And we was not in discordance or in quote unquote debate, but just wondering, what do you think is the hottest month? And I was like, July. And my lady Sarai was saying, no, it's August. And I remember being in that timing of quote unquote August, it was very hot. Why do I point that out? Because if this slave ship had over 800 people in it in the 1860s, where seasons were even more defined than now, where it wasn't 50, 60 degrees in the month of quote unquote February, can we imagine how this was here and how hot it was on that ship with 800 people? He was sentenced to death by Judge W.D. Shipman. In 1862, he was hung by the orders carried out by Lincoln. The word Gordon, being his name is Nathaniel Gordon, is traced to the Scots meaning spacious fort. Lincoln, in speaking of the slave trade, is noted for saying that a vessel is needed for the safety of that state against native African races. And in Liberian hands, it would be more effective in arresting the African slave trade. Source: The Civil War, the final year, told by those who lived it, by Aaron Dean. That's from a book source. When you're presenting things either in your book or whether you're presenting it online, cite your sources. It doesn't make you any less of a moray or teacher in the Hebrew understanding. It doesn't make you any less of a scholar or so forth and so on. For those who do know, the word scholar is the same root word in English for student. So all students are scholars because it takes heart to want to sit there and learn something. So in this particular case now, it says Lincoln, is speaking of the slave trade, is noted for saying that a vessel is needed for the safety of that state against native African races. And in Liberian hands, it would be more effective in arresting the African slave trade. So why do I point that out? When people would sit there and state that no president or no political leader spoke upon the slaves coming out of Africa, this right here speaks upon it. In the book, for those who are interested, called From Assyria to America, in that book, which is also available under the author named Vincent Hutchinson, named it as such in honor of my dad, may he rest in peace, you will begin to sit there and see that the Europeans in America did speak about their captives coming out of Ethiopia. Now, the Atlantic Ocean was called at one point the Ethiopian Sea. In past presentations, for those who do know, I showed a map of what is referred to as, quote, Negro land. In the book right here, brothers and sisters, I want to point this out. This book right here is called Black Cargoes. It's a book written back in the 1960s. And brothers and sisters, this book here talks about, quote, Negro land and where the slaves were captured from. So why, brothers and sisters, do we want to point this out for reference purposes? Why, brothers and sisters, do we get into this kind of talk, if we will? One thing to read in this book here real quick is this. Finally, on the west coast from the Gambia to southern Angola, the stretching across the continent from Kenya to Mozambique are Negroids. The inhabitants of this vast area are often divided into two groups, the, quote, true Negroes in the northwest and the Bantu in the south and east. But this distinction appears to be more linguistic than racial. Both groups, the true Negroes and the Bantu, although with more variation from tribe to tribe among the Bantu, have dark skins, woolly hair, thick lips, and broad noses, and are usually described as being the average height, that is the height of the average Europeans. Since the great centers of the Atlantic trade were on the west coast from Senegal to Angola. The vast majority of slaves shipped to the New World were Negroids. This is what we want to point out in this. Most of them were called what? By definition, according to this book, Negroids. For those Israelite brothers and sisters who do know and understand, you go into Zondervan Bible Dictionary, it says about the people of Ham not being the Negroes. So they knew when you cross-reference from book to book, getting your studying on and having understanding, thank the Most High, that the people whom they were capturing were not Hamitic nations, but were, quote, true Negroes, as the saying goes. Well, there's no place in African countries called Negro. But when you look back at a map at 1736 of Africa, they will show you, quote, Negro land, as was shown in the previous videos I've done upon this channel. So, brothers and sisters, this is something that we want to point out for reference purposes, if we will. All right? We intend, brothers and sisters, to come out with more and more information regarding this subject matter, its history, what we're talking about, why we say what we say, and not make it so my Israelite teacher said this, but more so having to cite secular sources to prove what we're talking about for those who are interested. So this guy here, Nathaniel Gordon, brothers and sisters, was a slave master, and he was dealing in the aspect of having slaves, or a captor, C-A-P-T-O-R. 1860 had a slave ship named Erie with over 800 slaves upon it. Captured in August 1860 by the USS Monacan. You can look up these names. You can research this thing yourself, brothers and sisters. Next part. The book my lady wrote, Her and I in Egypt. For those who are interested, as we close this presentation out, Chronicles of a Black Woman's Soul, In and Out of Time by Tanya Westbrook. You can get this book on Amazon as well, all right? Or you can call, and I'm going to put the number in here for a reference, if we will. You can call 718-864-3125. All right, hopefully everybody is well, and hopefully everybody will be better, and so on. All right, guess I made a little blunder. I meant to put up the picture of her and I in Egypt inside of that. But nonetheless, for those who do know, they who know. All right, but again, you can get this book, Chronicles of a Black Woman's Soul, In and Out of Time by Tanya Westbrook. All right, for those who are interested, again, you can get this book online, or you can, brothers and sisters, call the number 718-864-3125 for those who are interested in how to acquire those book of poems, which I state, having read it myself, it is not fake. Some of it is good for upliftment, and some of it is good for third eye edification. But none of it is bad. Some of them are funny, some of them are serious, but none of them are fake. And so when I do the presentations, I always want to make sure the lady in my life who motivates me to do good and great things, I definitely want to show and support her work as well. So, brothers and sisters, giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. I hope and pray everybody is well and will be well. I can be reached, brothers and sisters, at 908-587-4841. All right? For those who can and who are interested in such. All right? The sister Sarah wrote her number into as 917-463-8149. All right? Again, you can take that. 917-463-8149. My own personal number is 908-587-4841. All right, it's approaching what they call 9:30. My time is ending regarding this presentation. Subscribe to the channel. Next Tuesday, Creator willing, we intend to do a thing and close a Black History Month about the kings of Israel. With that, shalom.